he's seen in his career. Did that match
Who
up
did?
with what you, Congressman Hines?
No, I didn't see anything disturbing about it. What's disturbing to me is that millions of Americans have died from drugs being run to America by these cartels.
They call them narco-terrorists, and this administration finally hit them where it hurts. But now, some in Washington are trying to stop the fight. We just got two opposing viewpoints from Congress on the recent boat strikes, and one side is clearly putting policy excuses over American lives. We are at war, folks, and it's time to talk about who has our military's back.
Yeah, I want to thank Admiral Bradley and General Kane for coming to brief about the strikes on September 2nd, which were righteous strikes. These are narco-terrorists who are trafficking drugs that are destined for the United States to kill thousands of Arkansans and millions of Americans. The first strike, the second strike, and the third and the fourth strike on September 2nd were entirely lawful and needful, and they were exactly what we would expect our military commanders to do.
What exactly did you see in terms of the video of the second strike? Were there survivors?
What is up, Patriots, and welcome back to the channel. Before we dive into this critical breakdown, do me a favor. Hit that like button, smash subscribe, and ring that notification bell. We are fighting for truth and national security every single day.
I saw two survivors trying to flip a boat loaded with drugs down for the United States, back over, so they could stay in the fight. And potentially, given all the context we heard, of other narco-terrorist boats in the area coming to their aid to recover their cargo and recover those narco-terrorists. And just like you would blow up a boat off of the Somali coast or the Yemeni coast, and you'd come back and strike it again if it still had terrorists and it still had explosives or missiles, Admiral Bradley and Secretary Hegseth did exactly what we would expect them to do.
Did Congressman Hines said it's one of the most disturbing things he's seen in his career. Did that match
Who
up
did?
with what you, Congressman Hines?
No, I didn't see anything disturbing about it. What's disturbing to me is that millions of Americans have died from drugs being run to America by these cartels. What's gratifying to me is that the president has made the decision, finally, after decades of letting it happen, that we're going to take the battle to them. And we're going to continue to strike these boats until cartels learn their lesson that their drugs are no longer coming to America.
Did a military JAG say that the second and follow-on strikes were all lawful?
Yes, look, this is not like a firefight in some cave in Afghanistan that had 3 people. This was witnessed by literally hundreds of uniformed and civilian personnel at the Pentagon, at Fort Bragg, at other installations. Dozens of them were lawyers. Everybody was watching. Everybody had seen the intelligence and the legal basis leading up to these strikes. Everyone was present during it, and that continues to be the case. There's been no change in the guidance or the order that the Secretary has given to our troopers. And in subsequent strikes, there is an example where survivors actually were shipwrecked and distressed and not trying to continue on their mission. And they were treated, as they should be, as non-combatants. They were picked up by U.S. forces. Just an example of how, of course, our military always obeys the laws of war. Our military also acts within appropriate lawful authority to target these narco-terrorists.
But Congressman Hines also said that according to what he saw in that video, the two who survived trying to get back on the boat, there was no way they could have conducted further operations or anything like that. Do you disagree with?
Jim may disagree with the entire operation. He may be okay with drug boats running to America, or at least thinking that it's an effective tactic to interdict them. I just disagree with that. These are narco-terrorist, foreign designated terrorist organizations who are bringing drugs to our shores that have killed millions of Americans and thousands of Arkansans. If you think these strikes are justified and righteous, as I do, and I want them to continue, then of course the second strike, when you have 2 survivors who are trying to flip their boat back over and continue on their mission, remain in the battle. Unlike a subsequent strike in which there was no such indication, and they were what's called distressed or shipwrecked under the laws of the sea and the law of armed conflict, and our military went out and picked them up.
Is it your expectation that these strikes will continue?
It's my expectation and my deep hope that these strikes will continue.
What about on land? The president has said that strikes could happen on land. Is that something you would support?
If necessary to stop the flow of drugs into the United States and protect our communities and our children, we should take force to these cartels wherever they are authorized.
And should you think the video be released?
More common as strikes continue?
Say again?
Should briefings become far more common as strikes continue?
No, look, it's not Congress's role to sharpshoot every single tactical decision. This was the first strike, so understandably the Secretary and Admiral Bradley wanted to be involved in it, but subsequent strikes, again, we don't expect admirals and the Secretary of Defense to be approving patrols in Iraq or Afghanistan during the war on terror in those places. They shouldn't be involved in every single decision here, nor should Congress be sitting there sharpshooting and Monday morning quarterbacking.
But yesterday the president told reporters that this is war regarding the actions with Venezuela. So that seems like an escalation that Congress would want to be a part of.
Well, look, they came up here today to brief us because of the lies that were in the Washington Post last Friday to clear the air. I advise them next time to immediately put out what they told us today, because if they had put it out on Friday or Saturday, you wouldn't have the 6 days of controversy. I think you would have had the American people very satisfied that we have such a high degree of professionalism in our military, and the president is taking the battle to these narco-terrorists.
So you believe the whole video should be released in its entirety?
I mean, I'll leave that to the Department of Defense and whether or not there's anything in there they don't want to release. I didn't see anything in there that concerned me. Look, these videos have been made and released for 25 years. Like, you've all seen videos that have been released of drone strikes or helicopter strikes on terrorist groups in Afghanistan or Syria or Iraq or Yemen. There's nothing novel or new here. Just because it happened on water doesn't make any different than happening on land.
Senator, there was no change in protocol or policy from September 2nd through the rest of the strikes?
Nope. General Kane made it clear multiple times under questions from me that the orders have not changed from the first strike to today. So the actions that our military took on September 2nd and the actions they took on a subsequent strike in which there were distressed shipwreck that were deemed non-combatant is happening under the same legal standards and operation order.
Was there a kill-all order from Secretary Hegseth?
No, both. Admiral Bradley was very clear that he was given no such order, not to give no quarter or to kill them all. He was given an order that, of course, was written down in great detail, as our military always does.
But was there a vocal order as well?
There was no vocal order either.
After what you heard today, do you think it's appropriate for Senator Wicker to be launching into a continuous investigation into the second strike?
Well, I mean, I think what we saw today and what Senator Wicker and Senator Reid on the Armed Services Committee saw today is a very thorough inquiry into exactly what happened. I can't say what's going to happen on the committee in the future, but I think what happened today with General Kane and Admiral Bradley coming up and showing us the videos, kind of talking through everything that led up to September 2nd, is a very thorough review of what's happened.
No more information is needed from the table.
I don't personally need any more information, no.
If the
Senator, how far
administration
apart
goes,
were those strikes on September 2nd?
I mean, they're several minutes apart. You had obscurance, both the smoke from the first strike and then cloud cover as well. I couldn't tell you exactly how long.
But minutes,
They weren't.
not-
But minute.
I think minutes. Yeah.
Minutes, not hours.
Senator,
I don't think so.
Senator, you said that the strikes were righteous, that there were 4 of them. Would you have taken the same shot if you were in that position?
If I was Admiral Bradley and I'd been delegated that authority, absolutely. And I'd do it again.
Was there more than 4 shots?
based on the briefings,
No, there's 4.
based on the briefings you've received, do you agree with the president that we are at war in these engagements?
These drug cartels have been waging war against the American people for decades, and we are finally simply joining it.
We are.
All right, I got to go vote, y'all.
Senator Cotton came out here and he called these righteous strikes. He said that they were acting lawfully here, and he was perfectly comfortable with that. Did you come away with that same impression?
I think it'd be hard to watch this series of videos and not be troubled by it. So I don't reach the same conclusion that Senator Cotton does if you're describing it as righteous.
He said that.
But I have more policy questions than ever about the framing of the mission, the rules of engagement. I'm not going to get into the details, but there were some things that I was briefed on that are reassuring about process, about intelligence, about the role of the JAGs. But more broadly, What we are asking the men and women of our armed forces, and in particularly special forces, to do, I think still lacks clear justification. That's not specific to this operation or this strike. That's the entire undertaking. Exactly how narcotics being trafficked in the Eastern Caribbean on the open ocean connect to harming the United States at a level that justifies lethal strikes repeatedly, I have not yet been persuaded of. Given that we do interdiction in the open ocean with Coast Guard and DEA officers, agents, over and over and over, why these particular boats in this particular region ought to be struck by missiles and ought to be tweeted out by the Secretary rather than interdicted by the Coast Guard and then the crew interrogated for better information about the operations of narcotics traffickers. These incidents are happening a long way from the United States, in the open ocean in the Eastern Caribbean. I am not questioning how our armed forces are carrying out their orders. I'm questioning why the administration is engaging in this campaign and whether this is justified and the best use of these remarkable capabilities of the Navy and our special forces.
What Senator Coons said is that he said that from the video that he saw, that these survivors went back into the boat, but were trying to move ahead with their efforts to traffic drugs or provide information to other, what he said were narco-terrorists, and that's why it made sense to strike this boat again. Did you come away with that same impression?
I did not.
We're here to talk about the recent strikes against drug boats in the Eastern Caribbean. I want to start with a real American patriot, Senator Tom Cotton, who came out and said exactly what we were all thinking. These were righteous strikes. They were entirely lawful and needful because these cartels, these narco-terrorist foreign designated terrorist organizations are trafficking drugs designed to kill thousands of our citizens and millions of Americans. Cotton put the blame where it belongs. He said the video of the second strike showed two survivors trying to flip their boat back over so they could stay in the fight and continue their mission. That is why our commanders acted appropriately. He said the real disturbing thing is the millions of Americans who have died from these cartel drugs, not the lawful actions taken by our military. Listen to this. The military JAG confirmed all 4 strikes were lawful. This wasn't some backroom deal. Hundreds of uniformed and civilian personnel, including dozens of lawyers, were present. The military is following the law. And as Cotton pointed out, our military always adheres to the laws of war. He gave an example of a subsequent strike where non-combatant, shipwreck survivors were picked up by U.S. forces. This proves the protocol is sound. The senator gives massive credit to the president for finally taking the battle to them and making the decision to hit these boats until their drugs are no longer coming to America. This is an absolute necessity, and I fully agree with his expectation and deep hope that these strikes will continue and even expand on land if that's what it takes to protect our communities and our children. The cartels started this war decades ago, and we are finally simply joining it. Now, on the other side, you have Senator Chris Coons, who came out troubled by the video and refused to call the strikes righteous. He's demanding clearer policy justification for the mission. What more justification do you need than saving American lives? Coons is questioning the use of lethal strikes in the open ocean, arguing that we should be doing soft interdiction instead, so we can get the crew interrogated for better information. This is the kind of policy paralysis that gets people killed. We are fighting terrorists. You stop the threat with lethal force. You don't send the Coast Guard to ask a designated terrorist politely for a debriefing. He says he's not questioning how our armed forces are carrying out their orders, but he is questioning the administration's campaign and the use of special forces. That is a distinction without a difference, folks. You cannot undermine the war effort while pretending to support the troops. The question isn't whether the campaign is the best use of our forces. The question is, do you want the drugs to stop? The facts are clear. Senator Cotton delivered a powerful, fact-based defense of a vital mission that protects our country. Senator Coons, unfortunately, is using policy arguments to undermine a necessary act of national defense. We must support our military and the decision to eliminate the threat posed by these narco-terrorists. Let me know in the comments below. Do you think we should stop the strikes and start interrogating? Or is lethal force the only way to win this drug war? Stay safe, patriots. I'll see you in the next video.